Alright boys, what's up? It's Wizzy here and welcome back to yet another YouTube video, and today we're going to be looking at the Canon 500D versus the Nikon D3200 because hey, YOLO, like why not? Okay, I don't know what my life is. So the reason why I'm actually doing this is first of all, because I actually did get a new camera. As you guys are definitely seeing right now, the video quality is actually way better. It could just be because I actually have a different setup, but the reason why I decided to get this camera is first of all, I did actually find it for like 200 bucks. We did actually have to drive a really far way to get it. We did actually finally get this camera, and it's such a nice camera, honest to god. And today I'm going to be comparing it to my Canon 500D because YOLO, why not? Because these are both DSLRs and they're both pretty similar cameras. The first thing we're going to be comparing, guys, is actually the differences between the camera. One big difference between these two cameras, guys, is actually due to the fact that the Nikon actually has a microphone input, whereas the Canon does not actually have that whatsoever, and it also has way better battery life. And all the thing that actually is a little bit weird, and I really don't know why that is actually, is the actual lenses and all that type of stuff. The lenses on the Nikon are completely inverse the Canon lenses. What I mean by that is the way they go onto the camera is completely different, or I guess completely opposite of each other, and in the way they zoom and all that type of stuff, which is one of the weirdest things ever. And also the biggest difference actually is actually the menu setup. So the menu system is actually really complex on the Nikon for than as the Canon. It's actually way more simple because there's less features, obviously, and it's generally a pretty easier experience on the Canon, but the Nikon has way more features than the Canon, if you're putting on what I mean. And the other thing I noticed actually is that the Canon has slightly worse quality lenses than the Nikon, and what I mean by that is I actually do prefer Nikon glass and their lenses, because the Nikon with their focusing seems like so smooth compared to the Canon. I really don't know, but something about my Nikon has like a more high quality feel than the Canon. And the last difference, guys, is actually just due to the fact that these cameras are different sizes, and what I mean by that is the Nikon is slightly more smaller. That's actually because it's a little bit newer than the Canon, and it's also just way better of a camera in the first place. And now we're actually gonna do some video tests outside. So as you guys are seeing right now, this right here footage you're seeing right now on the screen right now, guys, is actually the Canon 500D zoomed in, but we're actually gonna zoom out. We're actually gonna also crop in my video editing software to see the difference in the detail normally, if you're putting on what I mean, or what I mean by that is actually at the 55mm, and you guys can definitely see that it did lose a little bit quality, and we're gonna basically do the same thing. This right here is the same exact shot on the Nikon D3200, and we're actually gonna zoom into the image, or actually zoom out, and we're actually gonna go to the crop, if you're putting on what I mean, and you guys can definitely see there is probably a lot more detail. Okay, there is actually a lot more detail than the Canon because it's such a better camera. And now we're actually gonna go to just a static image of the scene. This is also going to be testing how they do to grade, if you're putting on what I mean. So this static scene right now you guys are seeing right now was just shot on the Canon, and we're actually going to grade it in 3, 2, 1. And you guys can see how the Canon grades compared to the Nikon, which is also ungraded, but we're also going to grade it in 3, 2, 1. And this is what the Nikon video looks like graded, and this is what the Nikon video looks like in my setup, if you're putting on what I mean. And now we're actually going to switch to my older camera just to see the difference between the Nikon, my new camera, versus the Canon, which is my old camera. We're about to do this in 3, 2, 1. Alright guys, so this right here actually is the Canon 500D video, and you guys can definitely see there is a pretty big difference in the video quality, actually, honest to god, because first of all, this is a slightly worse camera. Okay, it's actually a little worse than, it's actually way worse than the Nikon, but as well, it's also a little bit of a cheaper camera. 100 versus 200 bucks. There is definitely a 100 price gap, but usually the Nikon actually sells around for actually $500 actually, so technically, this is probably a $100 camera versus a $500 camera, because there's a huge gap there, and you could actually do more with the technology on it anyway. So this is what the Canon 500D looks like in the same exact lighting. This is really good lighting, obviously, and you guys can definitely tell there is a huge difference between the Nikon and the Canon. So I'll actually slide the Nikon video right to here, and you guys can definitely see there is a pretty big difference. And now we're actually going to switch back to my new camera because YOLO, like why not, because it's way better quality. Alright guys, so we're basically back at the Nikon D3200 video, and now we're actually going to run over the specs of both of these cameras. So the first thing is, both of these cameras are actually DSLR, so they actually have the little viewfinder and all that type of stuff, and the wheel, I guess, if you're putting on what I mean. But The thing is though, this one actually has a microphone input, whereas the Canon doesn't. And as well, honest to God, I think Nikon lenses are a little bit better than Canon lenses. I don't know why, it's just because this one is a little bit more higher quality. That's besides the point. And as well, the thing is also really different about this camera is that due to the fact that it actually has a microphone input, whereas the Canon doesn't, and it actually has way different processing than the video, if you're putting on what I mean. That's the thing I kind of noticed when I first got this camera you guys are seeing me through right now, is that the processing was completely different, honest to God. The images looked completely different, and generally the audio even sounded completely different, even though both of them don't have the greatest microphones in the world, but generally they are completely different cameras, honest to God. The Nikon obviously is way more better than the Canon. That's because first of all, it's a little bit more of an expensive camera. Usually this camera runs for $400 to $500 with the stuff I got, especially with another lens actually. Yes, I do actually have another lens. That is the 55 to 200 millimeter lens for Nikon. Anyway, so the other spec that this camera actually has is a 20 megapixel sensor, whereas the Canon only actually has a 15.1 megapixel sensor, and also has way better autofocus compared to the Canon. Okay, so now we're gonna go to who is this camera for. Honest to God, the Canon is actually for someone who is on a really tight budget of $100, since the Canon 500D is a really solid camera for $100, honest to God, and I've been using it for like 5 months, and it's been probably one of the greatest cameras I've ever used. But this Nikon is probably the best camera I've ever used, and the Nikon is actually for someone who wants to actually spend a lot more, like say like $400 or something like that, get a decent camera, and as well just generally get more settings, if you're putting on what I mean, and generally just get more out of the camera. And if you really don't want to get a microphone like this and just want to plug into an external microphone and put it on the top, this camera is able to do it. And as well, this camera also has way better autofocus than the Canon, and as well generally it's just a way better camera, honest to God. It has way better processing. And yeah, any of you guys, I hope you enjoyed this little video. Leave a like if you liked it, and yeah, catch you guys right in the next one.